Okay, hello everyone. Today another special interview, and maybe this is the first of a series of interviews related to Aikido, but also about other things. Usually, a lot of this channel is about health and everything else and raw food, but some of you might not know been practicing Aikido for about 8 years, and something I'm quite passionate about and interested about. So, interview today is with Corky Quakenbush, and he can maybe give an introduction about himself a little bit as well. But I've practiced with Corky at a seminar a couple of years ago, and I've always been interested in his videos, and he has a lot of interesting things to say, not just about Aikido, but a lot of other things. So, an ideal person I thought to have to spend some time with, and I think he'll offer a lot of value to a lot of what he has to say, even if you're not interested in martial arts or Aikido at all. So, Corky, how about you give a little bit of an introduction as to your background and where you come from and so on?
Well, thanks, Ronnie. And I guess a good way to start would be to remind you or to inform your viewers that actually the founder of Aikido, Ueshiba, Morihei Ueshiba, who we call O-sensei, was also a farmer.
Right.
And he believed in the same things. And he said Budo, which is, martial arts, and farming are one. So Budo, from its root, means to stop the spear. It means to end conflict. And farming can do that because farming gives us our basic needs. And oftentimes what people are fighting about is basic needs that are not being met or perceived not being met. So one of the ways that we can end a source of conflict is to make the world more prosperous in the way of feeding everyone and seeing that everyone's needs are met. And that to me is the other side of Aikido, is how do we see that people's needs are met, the needs that drive attack, right? And a lot of people would misunderstand that as wanting to be nice to an attacker so that the attacker will change their mind and be nice to you. And it's not really that. It's more of an idea that when we learn how to connect with people in a way that we express our joint humanity, that that actually benefits us even more than the person we're extending that to. That people, I've talked to people about forgiving the people who have done nasty things to them, and their thing is, I'm not going to forgive that person. They don't deserve my forgiveness. No, it's not for them. It's for you. You forgive them for you, not for them. Your forgiveness may mean nothing to them, but it'll mean everything to you.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks for that as an introduction. And I believe that you're mentioning you're part of the entertainment industry. What's been your kind of profession and things like that? What have you been involved with over the years?
Well, ironically, my claim to fame has been the production of comically violent animation. So I've done some pretty edgy, pushing the envelope kind of things that have to do with violence.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of my alter ego in a way, but at the same time, I think that we have to be able to joke about some of this stuff in order to transcend that seriousness that keeps us in fighting mode or keeps us in defense mode.
Sure.
So that could be my excuse.
Sure.
But I got to look from outside to kind of figure out how I can have this one side on one side and the other side on the other.
Sure. Let's start with Aikido. How would you even describe Aikido? Like, what is it? What makes it different from other practices, other martial arts? Would you call it a martial art? How would you describe it?
Yeah, well, I was just on a panel, like an interactive panel of is Aikido a martial art? And my response is yes, by my definition of martial art. So let's start with that. My definition of martial art is a system of movements which are designed to protect someone from an attacker. And most martial arts, and what an attack is, I would define an attack as an action meant to destroy or control another person.
Right.
Okay? Or a target. And so I would say that most martial arts accomplish the goal of keeping the martial artist safe from destruction or control by another person by destroying or controlling the other person. Somebody punches me, I block and punch back, right? Pretty basic.
Yeah.
You know, someone spears me, I deflect the spear and spear them back, right? I would say where Aikido differentiates from that is that we make ourselves safe as Aikido people from destruction or control by another person while protecting the other person.
Yeah.
You know, and without destruction or control of the other person. We have a goal in mind that the event can take place and have a resolution in which no one loses. And this is kind of an interesting concept and hard for the mind to get around until you experience it. And then you experience the idea of winning and losing in a little different way, right?
Yep.
You experience winning is not so much dominating someone else or having them lose, but in a sense where everyone comes together and the intention to attack has dissipated and does not exist anymore. That's the win-win situation that is accomplished when Aikido is done effectively.
Fantastic. I remember you said that, I was going to ask what first drew you into Aikido, what was the first experience with it. I think I remember you telling me that you walked into a dojo and you saw a particular quote on the wall. I think you saw it said on the wall, Aikido is the love and protection of all things, or something, or one of those quotes. What was your first experience with Aikido like?
Well, I first experienced Aikido from afar. I was a Western fencer, and so my fencing class and my fencing club in college shared space with the group that came in either before us or after us. I don't remember now, but they were doing Aikido. And I remember seeing it and going, wow, what is that they're doing? And one of my fellow fencers, this had to be in the early 70s, said, oh, that's Aikido. So, oh, that's interesting. But I didn't do it. I didn't try it for 6 or 7 years. And I found there was a demonstration being offered, a class being offered for newcomers at one dojo. So I went there, and I was the biggest guy in the class, and the teacher asked for a volunteer, so I volunteered. And he said, grab my wrist, and he offered me his wrist for a cross-hand grab. And the next thing I know, I was on my knees in Nikyo. Ah! And I remember having two very distinct thoughts that happened at the same time. One thought was, wow, what on earth did you do, and how did you do that, and can I learn how to do that? But the other thought that happened simultaneously was, you son of a, I'm going to kill you. Right? Because the part of me that trusted him, right? Okay, I'll grab your hand. And met with this kind of destructive, painful thing. And this was not a conscious thing that happened. This was an automatic thought that registered. And so that taught me a lot about, things that would come back to my understanding later, about how those two thoughts could be in me simultaneously. And I did a few lessons with that person, but then, I had actually approached Aikido from a spiritual place, And this was not doing it for me at all. And I thought, maybe I just misunderstood what I thought Aikido was supposed to be. But then a couple of years after that, in 1983, I found myself living literally around the corner from another Aikido dojo. So I knew that Aikido was going to be in my life. And I said, well, I can't deny this synchronicity. It's literally, it's a 30-second walk. So I'm going to do it no matter what. And that school had actually two chief instructors that shared the space. And one of them was kind of like the first guy, so I steered away from his. And the other was a woman who was a Sao Tome student. And her approach was, she couldn't overpower anyone because she was smaller than me and not as strong. So it became, okay, now I think I'm starting to see more of what I was looking for. And it was there that I saw that poster on the wall with a picture of O-sensei that said, Aikido's a loving protection of all things, an oft-quoted quote, yeah. Often quoted. And but that was my first time seeing it. And I thought the beauty in that, the loving protection of all things, that's why I was attracted to it in the first place. But the interesting thing about it for me was then, as I went into the classes, the first thing they were teaching me were the ukemi part, how to roll and how to go to the floor and all these things. And I looked at this and I went, well, wait a minute, that's not what the person in the pants was. Why am I learning this? And the teacher told me, don't worry about that. You know, that'll all come to you later. And it was like, oh, no, I'm sorry. I said, but wait a minute, the loving protection of all things. So why am I learning this? And she said, oh, you're learning that to protect yourself. And I said, from who? And she said, from the Aikido person. A loving protector, I'm learning to protect myself. So that's when she said, well, don't worry about it. It'll kind of come to you later. But instead of coming to me later, well, eventually it did, but I just got sucked into, oh, I'm doing this so I can put this other person on the floor. No matter what they do, no matter how they resist, no matter what happens, I'm learning ways of leveraging them to the floor in the nicest possible way. You know, they don't end up with a bloody nose or a, you know, but the truth of it is they may have ended up with a bloody nose if they didn't know how to roll.
Right.
So this became quite a dilemma for me, but one that I chose to ignore at the beginning, like I think most people do, who come into it with spiritual leanings and then realize, oh, well, okay, I'm still going to dominate someone, but in a really nice way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think that's an illusion, and it's an illusion that proved itself to me personally to be an illusion when I had a, an essential moment in my training. I had been training for 18 years, almost 2 solid decades. And I had become a senior student in the school that I was in, and I was working with a beginner trying to show them an Aikido movement called Tenkan, mm-hmm. which is basically turning beside your partner so that you're facing the same direction, okay? And in order for this to work effectively, there's got to be an attack energy. The attack energy motivates the turn that the Aikido person does. And this person was a trained boxer. So he not only had an intuitive understanding, but he had a trained understanding that the moment he committed to the attack, he would make himself vulnerable. And he didn't know what I was going to do to him. Yeah. Maybe I was going to do the same thing that first guy did to me, which is put me on my knees in pain, put him on his knees in pain. So he was very reluctant, and he was like kind of giving me this. And if you work with beginners, you know that feeling of somebody checking out. Yeah. They're more interested, they're more curious about what you're doing than intentionally to show you to themselves. Yeah. So finally, getting frustrated, I said to him with my hand out here, like, that's the big Aikido joke, here, grab my wrist, right? And I'm here, grab my wrist. And I say to him, you really have to just trust me and attack. And he went, all right, and went, and came in and started choking me with both hands. Wow. Right? Here I have my hand out like this, and instead he's, right? So first response was, what the hell? But then no problem, right? Because I practiced, you know, at least half a dozen Aikido techniques 1,000 times each. And they always worked, and I always got graded and promoted. And none of my Aikido techniques worked on this guy. Nothing. Now, I wasn't helpless, because when someone has two hands on your throat, they have a lot of open target areas, right? There's a lot of ways you can get out of this, but everything that was coming to me as a possibility after my techniques were not Aikido, nor were they non-violent. So I really had to take a step back after all this time practicing, be honest with myself and say, it doesn't matter how long I've been practicing, I've missed the essence of this art.
Right.
Because if I had gotten the essence of it, there's no way that would have happened. There's no way O-sensei would have produced an art in which I would just be a sitting duck the first time I got a real attack.
Sure.
You know, no way. So something was wrong. So it took me about 2 years to move from that kind of epiphany to developing a practice based on intention rather than the repetition of technique forms. And in congruence with that, I started investigating the ideas that O-sensei put across that I had been ignoring or had been thinking of as poetic expressions. These things that Aikido is love, and it's the loving protection of all things. I said, okay, well, either the guy that I'm following is full of, or there's something to this that I'm not getting.
Yeah.
And having shown myself, having discovered to myself that I didn't get it, it made me more free to investigate what he was saying and what he really meant by that. So I stopped doing any techniques and I started working exclusively from intention. How does my wanting to help somebody or loving someone in whatever form love takes make Aikido? And little by little by little by little, that started to reveal itself to me. But the first practice sessions were awful because, I mean, in terms of frustration level, because I would have my partner grab me and she would give me this intent attack, and I would try to feel love, try to express kindness or compassion. And she'd be grabbing my wrist going, nope, no, that's not it, no, you know, and nothing was working. And then suddenly something would happen in my consciousness where I'd shift, and boom, she would be on the floor. And I go, what happened? What happened? She goes, I don't know, but that was it. That was it. I go, do it again. Do it again. I think I felt compassion. No, it was forgiveness. No, and then thing. So we would have these hour-and-a-half practice sessions in which we would find these pockets of Ikey maybe once or twice for a brief flash of a second. So it took years and years of this kind of effort to really kind of become clear in my own consciousness of what the shift was.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting to me because even in the midst of discovering this, becoming clearer, I went to visit Tsunoda Mori Shihan in Japan, in Kyushu, in Kumamoto.
Yeah, so I kind of a legendary Aikido teacher that isn't particularly well known.
Pardon me?
Just to explain to people, that's a kind of a legendary Aikido teacher that isn't particularly well known in terms of he's not one of the major,
right,
top, you know, famous teachers or you know, whatever.
Right. Well, Tsunoda Mori came to Aikido in a slightly different way than most of O-sensei students. A lot of probably the majority of O-sensei students came about through other martial arts. And when they discovered the martial effectiveness of Aikido, they shifted over. When they saw what O-sensei could do, they wanted to learn how to do what he knew how to do. But Tsunoda Mori, Kanchu Tsunoda Mori, came from the Emoto religion. That was the spiritual essence of O-sensei's art. And in fact, he left the Hanbu dojo in the 1950s, in the early 50s, to start his own dojo in the south of Japan. And so he had a kind of a similar experience that I did, because when he started his dojo, when he put up his placard that said Aikido over the dojo, all these judoka and karate doka would come, and because they hadn't heard of Aikido. It was really early in Aikido's development, and there wasn't mass communication, so nobody knew about this art down there. And they challenged him, and they said, well, let's see what you got. And Tsunedamari said he quickly realized that his technique wouldn't get him anywhere. His techniques were failing in these tests with other people. So that's why I was so interested in him, was his story went before mine, but almost in a duplicate way. He started looking at the words of the founder and trying to understand how that spiritual essence worked into what he was doing. So by the time I got to him, this was really well established with him. And when I went to Japan, I practiced with his protege, Hamada Sensei. And Hamada Sensei could say, see, grab me and feel how that feels, and then how this feels. And so he was demonstrating the kind of things that I demonstrated to you when I met you. But when I would say to him, I would say, Sensei, you showed me that, and you showed me the shift. What do you do to produce the shift? How do you change from this to this? And he goes, I don't know. And I said, but you do it. You do it. You show me the wrong way, so you must know how to get to the wrong way, and then you show me the right way, so you know how to get to the right way. What are you doing? And he said, I can't explain it. You have to ask Dai Sensei, Tsunedamari Sensei. And so it became my goal to be able to create a language to describe, right? Not only to describe it, but a mechanism to experience that. So that's been my practice as an Aikido, as an Aikidoka, is to approach Aikido and produce spontaneously manifesting Aikido through my intention that someone benefit from our experience. And second goal, to put that into a language that others can learn it without having to go through the 20, 30 years of training that I put in before they start to get a glimmer of it. Fantastic. And I'm happy to report that now I can work with people who've never even seen Aikido and have them experience this connection, the connection you experienced when we worked together.
Yeah, you mentioned quite an important word just a minute ago, and it's something to kind of maybe explore a little bit. Is it's either Ikey or just Ki even. Ikey being to me, when I hear people talk about Ikey, my tradition doesn't talk about it so much, but seems to be about it. It's to do with the connection between two people within an interaction. What's your definition of Ki? What's your definition of Ikey as well?
Well, the definition of Ki is going to be kind of grand, because I see Ki as, in a scientific sense, let me start with this. Science recognizes 4 fundamental forms of energy, right? Yes. Gravity, electromagnetic forces, and strong and weak subatomic forces. Okay? And those do a really great job of describing how the universe is put together in a mechanical sense, right? How things come together out of energy to form matter and particles and chairs and suns and space, right?
Sure.
But they don't do a very adequate job of explaining how these certain chemicals get together to create self-replicating conscious manifestations of material. In other words, how does all this chemical stuff make life, right?
Yeah.
So I see Ki as a 5th fundamental force of nature, fundamental force of the universe. And all of these forces are pretty much the same force, but they're they're put into defined characteristics by their function, how they operate, what they do, right? Gravity and electromagnetic radiation have a lot of commonality, but they are defined by their differences, right? But all of those four forces have one thing in common. They all have to do with relationship, right? Hadrons, relationship between particles that could be across the universe from each other, right? Gravity's relationship between objects that are close enough to be within each other's gravitational fields. And in a way, electromagnetic properties employ those same ideas of connection and repulsion and things like that, right? So when you think about Ki this way, as a life force, an energy that represents the things that make life go, then you get a different kind of perspective on it as an energetic force that comes through our planet and through our solar system and from the dark matter into manifestation. And if you look at the life force, you see the life force is a continuous flow of energy that started from the Big Bang into amino acids, into single-celled animals, into such and such and such. And while those physical forms come and go through birth and decay, the force keeps going. The force doesn't stop and start. The force is a continuous flow of that energy. And so while bodies are coming and going and evolving and lineages and lines and all working together, that life force itself just keeps pouring through that outer covering of the earth, bringing the dirt up into things that walk around and hear, see, smell, touch, feel, and back into the ground again, while that consciousness keeps going, right? Kind of an interesting way to look at it, right?
Yeah.
And one of my instrumental ways of seeing this, or one of my original inspirations, was Rupert Sheldrake, who put the idea of evolution. He put the idea of evolution as not like survival of the fittest, but that there's a unified field that's evolving. So everything fits together as it evolves. It all evolves together. And of course, that makes perfect sense in my model, because it's one big force of life that's creating everything that force of life needs to perpetuate, including prey and predation, right? Those are forms of connection, right? Love is also a form of connection. So I envisioned that our early ancestors, when they gained the cerebral capability to be self-conscious, they looked at this, they could finally recognize the difference between living and non-living. They see, oh, org over here, he used to walk around, now he's not doing, now he's stiff and he doesn't wake up. So they became conscious of the fact that there was a qualitative difference between living and non-living, right? And they also intuitively knew that that quality was what was making them alive and making everyone alive. And without any kind of understanding of it, they used the word God to describe it.
Right.
So they called this life force God. And there were some that realized that the way this life force worked was bringing people together to produce more people. And bringing people together, so as a group, they enhanced the capability of life, right? And they call this property that attracts them to each other, this property of Ki that attracts people together, they call that love. Not really understanding it, not really, but it was something that was common to their experience, and so they called that attractive property love. And there were some people that put two and two together and said, ah, God is love, right? But it becomes a little less clear because we all have our personal experience of love, but our personal experience of God is, or whatever that life force is more ethereal. It's less something we can experience together with other people. You know, unless we build a language to describe the same things, which is what religions do. Hopefully, if they're clear. Mythology does that. It gives us a language to explain how God, this creative source, works to keep us all alive. and how to treat each other in effective ways. So in looking at ki that way, right? Right? Then and as love, the Ikey is that connective property put together so that actions in interactions follow a path, right? The energy of an attack has to be transmitted from the body of the attacker into the face, into the core of the target.
Yeah.
So there's a connection there. So Ikey is a way of describing a harmonious movement with that movement in which the trajectory of that expression of energy will go to the floor without resistance. That would be what you'd call Ikey in a kind of physical way. So Aikido, the way of doing that, the way that energy unifies and follows a path based on its expression, would be Aikido.
Fantastic. That's one of the best explanations of that I've ever heard.
Well, thank you.
One of the most comprehensive.
Years in the making.
There's so much to talk about. I want to actually go back to some of your experiences with different teachers and different people. And for example, it seems like, as you call him, Suna de Marie. I didn't know that was how you pronounced the name. But it seems like
I'm not sure about it either, by the way.
Right, okay. Was he the?
I'm in America.
Sure. Was he a pretty unique teacher, or do you feel you've had experiences of the nature that you had with him and his students that you've seen around the world, or because you've practiced with all?
Yeah, I would say first that coming from the spiritual perspective of Aikido, he's fairly unique. Although, having said that, I felt the same incredible feeling from Bob Frazier Sensei.
Right.
Bob Frazier Sensei is also a Sufi priest. He's got his own spiritual traditions that align with his Aikido practice. And, you know, when I've been able to have the privilege of being with Bob Frazier Sensei, he's talked about the floating bridge of heaven, you know, this thing that connects the material to the spiritual, and how that's part of Sensei's understanding of the nature of Aikido. So I would say that Bob Frazier Sensei is also someone like that, but I don't think that, I'm not sure I can, how well known his teachings are, or how prominent they are in, you know, in comparison to somebody like TCA or Tohei Sensei or you know,
Saito Sensei.
Saito Sensei, right? Bob Frazier was an American. He was there with O-Sensei for a few years. He got ranked by O-Sensei into the Dan rankings, and then came back to the U.S. There are a couple of people that did that were Americans that came back. Terry Dobson. There was Bob Nadeau.
Robert Nadeau, yeah.
In the Bay Area. And they all have different perspectives on it. I wouldn't call Robert Nadeau's practice spiritual as
Robert Nadeau is very quite hard to follow. Some of his lectures and teachings, and he's quite complex in the way he expresses himself.
Well, in a way, but in the same sense, he's still talking about the same things.
Right.
Fact, he has a scroll from O-Sensei. O-Sensei gave him a scroll that said, "Teach the Aikido that can't be seen by the eye." And so I would say only that Nadeau, in my experience of Nadeau's Aikido, I feel dominated.
All right.
You know, in the nicest possible way, but still dominated. You know, whereas with Suna de Marie and Bob Frazier and a few other people, I never felt that domination. I felt that my intention to impose a connection on their central cores was what brought me to the floor, and that when I got there, I didn't care.
Yeah.
That I wasn't left with a residual feeling of, let me do that better so I can control you better.
Yeah.
It was left with a feeling of like, oh my gosh, you know?
Yeah.
So, and then I felt the same feeling from other people. And now I can feel it from my students also, which is the most rewarding to me when I grab someone, and it may take them a while. You know how I work. You know how these attacks are pretty debilitating without being destructive. And yet beginners that have never even seen Aikido suddenly will produce Aikido techniques that they've never even heard of or never seen or anything.
Wow.
Aikido people from the outside go, oh, that's Honage. Oh, that's no. Oh my gosh, they just did Nikyo. They've never been on a mat before. And not only did they just do Nikyo, but they did it from this really pure way that no one felt destroyed. Right? And no one felt, I didn't feel like I could stop them. Right? That it was really part of what my attack was rather than them doing something to me. Which, in my level of experience, you can't do something to me. You know, I mean, you may be able to overpower me or over leverage my attack, but we'll both know you did that.
Yeah.
That you used power and leverage, not Aikido in its purest sense. Because when you feel that Aikido in its purest sense, it blows your mind. It still blows my mind every time it happens. I just like, whoa, you know, it just sinks to this really deep level.
Yeah, it's what makes people want to keep going back and practicing, I think, because as I was mentioning to you before we started recording, that Aikido can be something that is, you can lose your motivation for it, you can become frustrated, you can question it, you can ask yourself why you're doing it, and so on. But when you do get those experiences of what you're talking about, the Aikido that can't be seen and so on, and these experiences and feelings that don't translate in video and so on, that really does refresh your desire to continue to experience it, because it's a great feeling. And I don't think you're going to get that in any other martial art apart from those that practice some form of, as you're talking about, Aiki or maybe Daitu Ryu and other things like that from the same tradition. But it's such an unusual thing when people have developed that. It's a unique experience for sure.
It's unique for me. I've never felt it in any other way, in terms of the relationship of an attacker. Right? We feel the same feelings when we are with people that we love. You know, it's not hard, but our brain is not wired to feel love and protective of people who are attacking us. It's just not wired that way. So what we do, what I feel the idea of Aikido is to rewire the brain so that we can come from a compassionate place when under attack. And this, strangely, because of the fields that those intentions produce, the field of energetic field of an attack combined with the energetic field of taking care of someone, produces the flow of Aikido. So it's really weird, I know. And it feels weird every time it happens. It's something I love to feel, and I never get used to the feeling.
Wow.
Right? It never becomes boring to me. I'm always just blown away, no matter who it happens with. Especially when I'm an attacker, is what I'm saying. It's hard to not believe it when you're nogging, because it feels so effortless. You have to constantly question your students or your partners. Did you just fall down for me?
Yeah.
Really mean it. Because if you're faking me out, that happened to me already for the first 18 years. So I don't want that anymore. I need you to be honest with me. So, but when you feel it on the other way, when you know you're bearing down on somebody, and you got them, and then the next thing you know, you're on the floor with a big smile on your face, because that's the other weird thing about Aikido. It's the only martial art in which the person who's attacking, when their attack is dismantled, goes to the floor with a big smile or a laugh.
Yeah.
It's a weird, because the way it gets to your body, it brings out that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and again, I think it's that mirror neuron stuff that Systema people talk about. It's the way that my wife and I were just talking about how we saw each other from a bit of a distance, and other people noticed us smiling at each other and smiled themselves, even though they didn't know us or have anything to do with our relationship.
Sure.
Smiling is contagious. Laughing is contagious. You know,
yes,
because of the feelings that you get with these fields that are produced with this intention.
That's what I want to go into just now as well. Is just before we were recording, you mentioned the concept of intentions forming fields. What do you mean by that, and what do you mean by that, basically?
In a lot of systems, people take the think of the model of your energy flow kind of beginning in your hara, your center of gravity area, okay? And this is an interesting place in the human body energetically, because it's not only our center of gravity when we're standing upright, but it also is where the reproductive organs are, and the umbilical cord comes out near that area, and you know, from a mom, that is a real link to furtherance of life in that area, right? And when we move, when we walk, our hara moves before us. Our intention is what precedes any action, and that includes on in an involuntary way. So when you think about the intention of your heart beating, that's to supply blood flow to your body. So there's an intention that creates the action. Even if it's an involuntary, unconscious intention, there's still an intention, and that creates action. But for it to create action, it has to create an energetic field for that action to fill, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So if you have the intention to walk across the room and go through a door, right? You don't have to think to yourself, okay, now I'm going to have to put my left foot out, put my right foot after that, then my left foot, then my right foot, a little, you know, a foot in front of the other. You don't have to think that. Your intention draws you to the door, draws you in that direction, and your body fills in that intention, right?
Yep.
And I can prove this really easily by having anyone think about a time they were tripped, where they get tripped on their feet, right? Because what happens is your intention's moving forward and your feet can't keep up with the intention. Your intention is to go over here, but your feet are stopped by that block or by whatever you're tripping on. So your intention throws you off balance, because your intention moving ahead, right? It's ahead of your body. So the intention of an attack is a focus of energy into a destructive force, like a spear. The intention of a spear is to focus energy into a tiny point that's sharp. The sharper the point, the easier that focused energy can penetrate, right? The field, the intention of a shield, which if we defend ourselves, see, even the putting up of the hands is not the same as the putting in of a fist or a knuckle or a knife point. It's to block something. It's to put a field to stop things from connecting, right? The intention of a withdrawal, of an escape, is to run away. And we see that that intention is probably the least effective in terms of safety, because you're relying on your ability to be faster than your attacker.
Yeah.
Right? If you're if you get attacked and with a spear and you put a spear out also, it can be an effective defense, because if you can kill your attacker, you don't have to worry about the attacker anymore, right? But the detriment of that is that that attack can kill you too. So you could die, you could both die, right? Or he can kill you and you miss, right? A shield has a different intention. That's to keep the attack away from your central core, which is a great thing because now you have 100% of your defense, 100% of your reaction into keeping an attack at bay from having it affect you. So with a spear, you don't have the same thing. You got intention going in, there's something coming back into you, and you don't have anything in defense if you're 100% in attack. So that's good to keep the attack away, but the detriment to that approach, to that response, is that it doesn't affect the attacker. The attacker can keep trying to get around the shield or break through it, and until he gets tired or gives up or hungry and goes away, you have to keep the defense up.
Yep.
Right? So there's detriment and there's, but both of things have a field to them, a field of energy. If I'm attacking, I focus my energy and that comes out from me. If I defend myself, I focus a field of energy out here in my arm or my shield that I hold to keep the attack back, right? But it only goes so far.
Yep.
The withdrawal of energy is sucking energy in so I can go that way. But that draws the attack in. So the good side of that approach is I don't have to put any energy into holding something back or killing it if I can get all my energy into getting out of a situation, right? But of course, the bad side of that is if they catch me, I've got nothing in defense or attack back, and I'll be destroyed for sure. And that's what we see with prey animals like rabbits and goats and things that don't have any defense against a lion. They can't shield against it. They're not a turtle with a shell that can use a natural defense. They don't have sharp teeth so they can attack back. They have only one defense, that's to run away. And it'll work great a lot of times. But then that one time it doesn't work at all. Now, so those are the defense matrix responses when you perceive threat. You either fight back, hold something off, or run away. The Ikey response, the love response, if you could imagine the fields, attack would be a sharp, penetrating field. Shield would be a broader, kind of limited field, absolute limit. Withdrawal would be the field moving in. But the beneficent intention, when you intend to benefit, when you intend that everyone benefit, the expanding field expands and includes. And so if you imagine that, here's a bottle, and the bottle has a central core to it. So if the bottle is sitting on the table, and I move into the central core of the bottle, I can push it over. I can destroy the bottle, or I can penetrate it and pop it, right?
Yeah.
If the bottle moves away from me, if the bottle puts up shield, it's going to penetrate. If it holds its ground, it's going to penetrate. The bottle doesn't really have a spear thing to it. And if it withdraws, it'll just keep the attack coming in, right?
Yep.
Now, if the attack doesn't go to the central core but misses, then nothing's affected. But if it goes into the middle and there's an expanding inclusive field, the attack will turn. It will go from linear into a circle, into a spiral, and it will draw me, the attacker, in with it until I fall.
Yep.
Because that spiral can only go so far until my imbalance comes into a fall. So this expanding field connects with the attack. So the attack remains connected to center, but doesn't penetrate because it's moving.
Sure.
And it's expanding. So all this penetration energy goes into a circular form, which guides you to the floor. So from a non-brain chemistry standpoint, the beneficent field creates kind of like a ball, a bubble. And the bubble, rather than being penetrated by the spear, actually connects with the spear so that the spear goes over. Kind of like if you were to stick a stick or a branch into a waterfall. right? You can come up to the waterfall, but once you get into the waterfall, it's gonna drag it down. So your spear into the waterfall is gonna go woo like that. You try to stick a big log or something into a waterfall, and it's gonna suck you down into it with it, right? That's the nature of the flow, right? Although a waterfall's different dynamics, but it's just something to visualize.
Fantastic.
How that can draw something in, right? Or a surfer on a wave. A surfer starts and the wave builds and the surfboard goes over the top, right? Yeah, they have to be within the pocket. If they stay outside the pocket, they'll get on the top of it and they'll go a different way.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced your class as well, and it's quite hard to get into that, you know, because you always point out, no, that's spear, that's shield, that's drawing away,
Right.
and you're trying to,
because
you're trying to respond. So let's talk about Ikey Lab. Where did that come from, and how did you put all that together, and what is it really?
Well, I started calling it Ikey Lab because the practice stopped being teacher shows student, student imitates teacher. It wasn't that kind of form anymore. Now it was an active learning of each partner with the help of their attacking partner to investigate the nature of the connection. And so in a lab, we tend to look at information and compare it to other information and to put it in our, and to collect data. And we're collecting data in our subconscious. We're collecting data in our neurochemistry now. When we do this, every time we do this and we achieve this Ikey feeling, it makes a neural pathway from the perception of threat to the beneficence matrix, where we can respond with this expanding, inclusive field, right? So I called it a lab because everybody's doing it on their own. You know, we coach each other. So my students, I don't call them students anymore because I'm not necessarily teaching them as much as participating in our mutual learning. So when it's their turn to be okay, they can catch me just like I can catch them. They can give me attacks that cause me to respond in those defense responses, and then I have to do the work that I like to do in order to transcend that and find the true Ikey, rather than just using an Aikido movement as a leveraging technique, as a leveraging way to make somebody conform to the throw that I want to put them through.
Excellent.
So that's why it's Ikey Lab.
And where are you practicing Ikey Lab? And do you have any classes coming up or anything that you're doing at the moment?
Well, I have a home dojo in LA, but because we travel so much, you know, I've been practicing different places. So luckily for me, the dojo in LA goes on through my my practice partners, Renee Galindo from who's in Los Angeles. He takes over. He's a 5th Dan in probably the hardest style of Aikido I've ever seen. It's just really brutal. When you look at his teacher that gave him the 5th Dan, it's brutal stuff. So the benefit for me is that he knows what it's like, and he knows how to impose a connection that's destructive. So I don't get any BS from Renee. I get honest ukemi, and I get honest feedback from him too.
Great.
So,
and if people want to find you, you're on YouTube, Corky Quakenbush. You also, do you have a website at all, or anything, or Facebook group? Or?
Yes, it's westlosangelesaaikido.com. westlosangelesaaikido.com.
Cool.
But you know, that needs a lot of work, and I'm shifting it over slowly to the ikeylab.com.
Sure, brilliant.
It hasn't done it yet, and I'm also in the process of making an online manual for practicing this way, because I've really kind of gone away from the traditional approach, and even teaching beginners. I've come up with new ways of teaching beginners that I find much more effective than the way I learned Aikido.
Interesting.
And I'm on Facebook too, so people can contact me any way they like.
Sure. You're in Texas right now?
I'm in Texas right now, but I've got a television project that's just kicked into gear. So we're going to leave here in a few days and head back to LA to begin work on a television special for a large network here in the US.
Brilliant.
But when I get back to LA, I'm planning on doing some weekend workshops, and also some people have been asking me for intensive training. So if I can find a space of time, I'd like to do some full weeks, a full week of training with interested people. I like to keep things on a small scale though, because the more individual, the more I can get my hands on people and them get their hands on me. I think the easier it is to kind of transmit some of these things out of the realm of confusion, at least to get a point of reference. Like you were describing, you now have a point of reference after working with me that one day.
For sure.
So now you know what the end goal feeling is.
That was one of the weirdest kind of experience just all over, because you were in this kind of weird castle. You were staying in with this eccentric sort of kind of English eccentric guy, really quite interesting guy, and it was a week. I think I drove like 2 hours to get there or something. I got my dad to drive me because my car wasn't working or something. I can't remember, so I had to go and get my dad to drive me there, and it was really worth it. It ended up being worth it. You know, it was a great experience.
I'm really glad to hear that.
I wanted to just. We've covered so much, and there's so much. Obviously, it would be great to interview you again another time. But it's clear to me that before Aikido, you had some kind of spiritual background. Did you have what was your background in spirituality and those kind of experiences, and what's been your experience of your own insights into that in life?
Well, I probably took a little weirder a weirder path than most of my Aikido brethren, in that I kind of came to my spiritual what should I say? I don't know. My spiritual point of view through psychedelics.
I was gonna ask. I don't know why that.
Yeah, and I had an interesting experience on LSD once, in which I had a religious epiphany that I was completely unprepared for. In fact, the whole time it was happening, I was thinking, whoa, wait a minute. This stuff, where's this coming from? But it tied into some things I was reading. I found in some Jung essays that I read, and it kind of made my spiritual quest in my life unavoidable at that point. I had really no interest in pursuing a spiritual lifestyle or understanding the nature of spiritual things, but then that kind of said, it's not your choice anymore. It's not going to be up to you. It's going to happen whether you want it to or not. So that led me to get more of an understanding of connection and kind of the spiritual things we were talking about. And then Aikido started to tie in with that. And then, as I said, the first time I experienced Aikido, I didn't feel any of that. And so I thought, oh, I must have that Aikido connection part wrong. But then later on, it proved itself to be integral to my spiritual development.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well,
but anyway, I'm sorry. I'm going to probably have to cut it short now, because we can do it again. But my host, Corey, here, we want to go practice some Aikido. And he keeps kicking me under the table. No, I'm kidding. That's my wife kicking me under the table.
Okay, great. No,
it's not true.
Really nice to speak to you again. Hi, Linda. How are you doing?
Good to see you and hear from you.
Yeah, I was gonna message you this morning, and I couldn't get a hold of Corky, but I thought that you'd be more likely to answer for some reason, but.
Oh, as a really funny coincidence, you know, did you remember the two young girls that were at Thomas's castle?
Yes, I do.
They were from the U.S.
That's
well,
right,
we remained friends with them, and I just reconnected with Jenna online just yesterday. I hadn't spoken with her in probably a year.
Yeah, yeah. They seem to be really fascinated with what you were saying and what you were doing.
Well, Jenna's a force to be reckoned with now. She's been doing gender studies and is now going for her law degree.
Wow.
And yeah, she's just going to be a force to be dealt with in terms of human rights, I think.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And so just to finish off, Corky, any last remaining thoughts and anything else you want to share just before we stop there for now?
Well, I think I'm just really excited and optimistic for the future, despite all the kind of bad news that seems to be permeating our experiences. And the reason I'm optimistic is that I see so much of this convergence of ideas, and looking back in history and seeing the progression of human rights and the inclusion and sense of self, the outward expansive inclusion. We now think of sentient beings as part of us. So we want to protect the environment. We want to protect animals that we will never see. We extend our sense of self, and as we do, that produces less violence. And the world has never been in a better place than it is now, despite what these kind of bubbles of old styles of thinking, us versus them, we win at your expense, still are there. But this other thing growing underneath it is just making those into bubbles and things that are going to pop and disperse. And I'm really looking forward to what Aikido and all these other convergent practices are shaping humanity into something in which we will really find a paradise on earth.
Fantastic. A great way to end.
You're saying it's the age of Aquarius. We saw that dawning of the age of Aquarius in the 60s, but wasn't such an instantaneous thing. I give it another 30 years before war is obsolete.
Wow.
And people look at that and go, you've got to be crazy looking at the things there are. And nope, things are moving so fast that in 30 years, the idea of going to war with someone, the idea of destroying someone because they have an idea that's different from yours, is going to be not even in the human consciousness, because it really makes no sense that we could destroy someone with a better idea of how to be, how to live, because we're superior in our ways of destroying them.
Wonderful
it's
stuff, Corky.
Irrational.
Yeah. Well, I really hope everyone's enjoyed the interview as much as I have, and I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this interview for hopefully for years to come as well, as we keep it up online. And for those who want to learn more about Corky, westlosangelesaaikido.com, and you can search on YouTube, and I'll put some links down below to some of your videos, your channel and stuff like that. And,
yeah, I need to put some more stuff up on YouTube. I've been reluctant to do so because a lot of it seems redundant to me, because when I go into new situations to take or teach, often I'm covering a lot of the same ground. And I don't want people to get bored going, oh yeah, not this again. But
well, I think you've got so much to say though that I think people would benefit from the repetition,
Maybe that's what they say, so I'll probably put some.
Anyway, thank you very much, and thanks everyone for watching. And if you've enjoyed this this video, then put some comments below and share it with other people you think might find it interesting, and all of that good stuff. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronnie. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.